I want to open up by saying I ain't no prodigy. I'm just, I just went to film school and I got a chance to make a movie.
Violence in Southern California at least 2 movie theaters with the new film Boyz N The Hood.
Boyz N The Hood.
Boyz N The Hood.
The script was like a story of my life.
Women are underrepresented.
Its opening citywide has been marred by several incidents of violence.
Story is our true story in South Central Los Angeles.
It's really a good film.
It's the summer of '91. Boyz N The Hood has hit theaters, and its director John Singleton has become Hollywood's newest sensation. With a story inspired by his upbringing in South Central, the film was an instant classic. Plus, he was just 23 years old. 2 years later, he would release his follow-up, Poetic Justice. And this wasn't just any other movie. This was a statement. Poetic Justice was romantic. It was raw. It was black. But what most don't know is the story behind the film, the reason it was made, and how it transformed not just the audience but the very people who brought it to life. What happens when you bring together a former child actor, a pop star, a filmmaker, and a revolutionary? You get something rare, something poetic. To tell the full story, we have to go way back.
Janet Jackson, hell yeah, I had my tongue.
Nah, let's go a little farther.
Is this somewhat autobiographical?
Well, I went from living with my mother, to living with my father when I was 11 years old, and it caused a big change in my life. He set me straight. So that was a catalyst for me to make this movie.
John Singleton knew he wanted to go to USC. He'd been a film lover for as long as he could remember. As a kid, he'd watch drive-in movies from his mom's apartment window, following the stories just by looking at the images on the screen. He was enamored with storytelling and poured that passion into writing film reviews for his school paper. But he knew the best place to learn was about a 20-minute drive away from Blair High School. USC's screenwriting program had been created about 4 years before, and with everyone clamoring to be accepted into the film production track, it was easier to get in for writing. The application asked him to describe 3 ideas for a film. One of those was based around his own lived experience of growing up in LA. The initial title for his concept was Summer of '84, influenced by the film Stand By Me. After he got accepted, he let the idea go for a while, inspired by other things, like winning the Jack Nicholson Award for Screenwriting in 1988 for another script. But after watching Do the Right Thing, the idea manifested itself again. In an article for The Ringer, he's remembered saying, "I gotta do my I'm making my movie."
The best moments of film are moments in which you watch it and nothing is being said, but everything is being said. That's what it is for me. So I try to write, when I write something, I try to say things without saying things.
John Singleton of Los Angeles is 22. He wrote and directed Boyz N The Hood while still an undergraduate at USC.
He finished the script in 3 weeks, often listening to NWA and Eazy-E, and aptly titled his project Boyz N The Hood. The film follows Trey as he navigates life in South Central Los Angeles. From his disciplined, if not flawed father, Furious Styles, to his childhood friends Ricky and Doughboy, each character reflects a different path within the same environment. There's more, but to not spoil a 30-year-old movie, I'll digress. A senior at USC, Singleton got discovered by an agent while interning at Columbia Pictures. His job was to read scripts and either send them to his bosses or reject them. He constantly complained about the work, calling all of them whack-ass scripts to Rolling Stone magazine. Until the director of the program asked to read his work. That was a Friday. By the next Monday, the creative arts agency was calling. They wanted to sign him. Soon after, his script started to circulate. Russell Simmons loved it and wanted to adapt it himself. But the script was getting so much hype that Columbia offered him a 3-picture deal. He hadn't even graduated yet. John had built up enough leverage to eventually persuade Columbia into directing the film. Shot on a $6 million budget, Boyz N The Hood would star relative newcomers Nia Long, Regina King, Cuba Gooding Jr., Morris Chestnut, and Angela Bassett in their first major movie roles. One of the most vital characters in the movie, Doughboy, was played by Ice Cube, who Singleton had written the character after. In July 1991, the film was released, and eventually made over $100 million at the worldwide box office. It was a smash. People everywhere were enthralled by the story, the characters, and John's fresh perspective. You see, at the time, there was about one other black director who Hollywood had eyes for.
Spike Lee.
Spike Lee.
Do you know who the best player in the game is? Me.
Don't get me wrong. There were many black directors who had gotten their shot. Mario Van Peebles dropped New Jack City the same year Boys came out, and Reginald Hudlin directed the comedy House Party. which had major box office success. But Spike was the man. Do the Right Thing was named the best film of '89 by many publications, and he was nominated and subsequently snubbed at the Oscars for the film. I mean, Dead Poets Society wasn't that damn good.
I think the film is stronger than any Oscar nomination it was denied.
Anyways, Boyz N The Hood dropped 2 years after Do the Right Thing came and shook things up. And not only was it a box office smash, it drew critical acclaim. John received 2 Oscar nominations for Best Original Screenplay and Best Director. He was not only the first black man, but also the youngest person ever to be nominated for that award. One stark contrast between John and Spike was their relationship with the Directors Guild of America. John was a member of the union, which helped him gain early acceptance into Hollywood. Spike, however, was notably and purposefully not a part of the DGA, a decision that may have come at a cost. It's widely speculated that his lack of union affiliation contributed to him being shut out of not only a Best Director nomination, but also potential wins in other categories. Historically, only 7 directors outside the union have ever won the Oscar for Best Director, and to this day, no black man has ever received the honor.
Some theaters that will show Boyz N The Hood this weekend plan to beef up security. That's to make sure the film does not touch off a rash of gang violence.
Even though Boyz was successful, not everyone loved the film, of course. There was criticism that it incited violence, with reports of shootings at screenings from Tuscaloosa, Alabama to Universal City. At least 23 people were wounded, and 1 person was killed while at the movies.
The film didn't create the problem in the first place, okay? I would support anybody who is about some change in this country as a whole, you know, because that's what the problem is.
Another notable critique of the film revolves around its portrayal of women, which some argue reflects a predominantly male perspective, leading to a misrepresentation of the women in the neighborhood. While the film is widely praised for its exploration of systemic issues affecting black men, its depiction of women has been criticized as one-dimensional and filtered through the lens of the male characters. Director and media exec Jackie Jones wrote in her review of the film, "Women appear in Boyz N The Hood only to symbolize the oppressions facing black men, as either barriers or burdens. Take for example Trey's mother, Reva. She's portrayed as a professional, upwardly mobile, and successful woman who is determined to give her son the best possible future. Despite these qualities, the film reduces her role to a foil for Furious. While Reva is a complex character in her own right, the narrative positions her more as a stepping stone in Trey's journey toward manhood than as a fully realized individual. As Trey grows older, he is shown distancing himself from her, further diminishing her presence in the story and reinforcing the idea that her role in his life is secondary to Furious. Similarly, the depiction of Mrs. Baker, the mother of Ricky and Doughboy, highlights another contentious portrayal of women in the film. Mrs. Baker is shown as a single mother trying to raise her sons in a difficult environment, yet her character is defined by favoritism and division within her family. She showers affection and encouragement on Ricky, her athletically gifted son, while showing clear disdain for Doughboy, whom she views as a troublemaker. This dynamic reinforces the perception that Mrs. Baker's actions contribute to the rivalry and resentment between her sons. While her favoritism could be seen as a coping mechanism in a harsh environment, it also reduces her character to a stereotype of the flawed matriarch without delving into her deeper struggles or motivations. These portrayals have sparked debate about whether Boyz N The Hood perpetuates negative archetypes for women in our communities. Both Reva and Mrs. Baker are relegated to supporting roles, their lives and perspectives overshadowed by the central male characters. But it was called Boyz N The Hood, and with John's focus on exploring black fatherhood and the realities of growing into a man in South Central, it's understandable, if not inexcusable, how the women's perspectives could get lost. John refuted any criticism that his work came from a sexist point of view, stating that it wasn't intentional, and his next film would focus more on a woman's perspective and the politics of black love. He just had to write it.
Not since Michael Jackson's Thriller has an artist dominated the field so completely, and never before in history has a woman won this unprecedented number of awards. All this at the tender age of 24. Ladies and gentlemen, the remarkable spirit of Rhythm Nation, Miss Janet Jackson.
In 1991, Janet Jackson was a newly married woman, but nobody knew about it. Renee Elizondo Jr., who met Janet around 1982 and was later her sister LaToya's backup dancer, had somehow charmed his way towards the youngest of the Jackson siblings. They were friends at first, who began to work together, which led to a romantic relationship. But wait, hold up. I know y'all know who Janet Jackson is, but do you really understand who she was in 1991? We're planning on doing a full deep dive into her career in some later videos, so please forgive me if I fly over some things for the sake of time. But let me take y'all back real quick.
Michael, Marlon, Jermaine, Tito, and Big Jackie, the mighty, mighty Jackson 5.
The UK has their kings and queens and all that. America's got our celebrities. And nobody has come close to American royalty quite like the Jackson family. I mean, Michael was literally called the king of pop. The Jackson family was at the top of the A-list since the early 70s, and Janet, the youngest of the bunch, was thrust into the spotlight along with her siblings. At just 7 years old, she was performing at the MGM Casino with her sisters in Vegas.
Mama?
In 1977, at just 11 years old, she landed the role of Penny on the sitcom Good Times, portraying a young girl who escapes her abusive mother and finds a home with the Evans' neighbor, Willona. This breakthrough role transformed how the public saw her. No longer just the little sister of a famous family. She also proved she wasn't only musically gifted. She could act, and damn good too. She began making her mark on television, co-starring in Different Strokes and Fame. Despite her early success, a solo singing career wasn't part of her plan. She dreamed of going to college to study business law, aiming for a path outside the family's musical legacy. However, her father, Joe Jackson, had a different vision for her future. Much like everything else in his children's lives, he demanded she follow his vision and become a singer. Hell, Michael did it, Jermaine did it, LaToya was trying to do it. And in 1982, it was Janet's turn.
Imagine trying to make a name for yourself in showbiz when your brothers are the Jacksons, one of the most prominent acts in the music industry. Well, my next guest has carved a niche for herself as a regular on the hit series Different Strokes. And she's just released an album. Here's Janet Jackson. My, you're a pretty young lady.
Gee, thanks.
At 16 years old, she put out her debut album. The self-titled project peaked at number 63 on the pop charts. That same year, she met Renee through a mutual friend, but someone else had Janet's attention at the time, James DeBarge. The two met at Soul Train after the DeBarges made their debut performance. Janet's second album, Dream Street, performed a little worse in 1984, only making it to 147 on the Billboard 200. Janet would secretly marry James that year, in an attempt to loosen the controlling grip her father had on her life. And while her brother was on the fast track to becoming the most famous man in the world, after 2 albums with mediocre performances, Janet's music career was seemingly going nowhere fast. She had been under her father's thumb for so long, singing what the label told her to sing and doing what others wanted her to do. She cut off all business relationships from her family, divorced her husband after less than a year due to his alleged drug addiction, and started doing her own thing. Renee had been there for her, listening and being a friend. But Janet was on a search for something else at that time. Control.
Give me a beat.
Her third album, Control, catapulted her into superstardom. It was her first #1 album, staying there for 4 weeks. It also had 5 top 5 singles, including When I Think of You, which cruised to #1 on the pop charts. She was the first woman ever to have that many high-charting hits on the same album. Just 4 years before, Michael dropped Thriller, which was breaking rules and setting records all over the place. But Janet was taking her place in the pop history books too, setting the record for being the fastest-selling female artist after the album sold 250,000 in its first week. By the time the album came out, Janet and Renee were dating, and she would take him on various promotional tours and red carpet appearances. Control went on to sell over 10 million copies worldwide. But her next album would be even bigger.
I know a song can't change the world, but if our music can inspire some of the people and make them want to join hands and begin to deal with a lot of the social problems we have, then hopefully we could make some sort of progress.
Released in 1989, Rhythm Nation was Janet's take on a socially conscious album. This album, too, shot to #1 on the charts. With singles Miss You Much, Escapade, and Love Will Never Do, it became the first album ever to have 3 #1 singles in 3 separate calendar years. Funny enough, the music video for Love Will Never Do hinted at what was to come, but we'll get to that later. The album was followed by a tour in 1990, which became the most successful debut tour in history. Renee was heavily involved in the Rhythm Nation album era, serving as not only her confidant, but as a creative consultant. In a 1998 article with Rolling Stone, Janet claimed that Renee had refused to take credit for his work on Rhythm Nation, stating, Renee has also been my co-writer on almost all my songs since Rhythm Nation, but refused to take credit. He wanted to prove that he wasn't with me to take, but to give. I appreciated that attitude, but I also saw that it was leading to feelings of fraudulence on his part and mine. They became one creatively, in a sense. Janet trusted him completely, and he was often seen by her side, giving input on choreography or her image. Saint has a really good deep dive into their relationship, in which he points out that around this time, Renee started to become fixated on the idea and image of Janet that he was helping curate. A creative director's job is to usually oversee and perfect a product's image in order for it to be successful. But when the product is a person, and the person you're in a relationship with, that control has the potential to turn dangerous.
Do you have an easy time being directed by him?
Yes.
Photographed by him?
Yes.
Do you trust him?
Yes, totally.
What about her as a subject to work with?
Oh, it's like doing, no. Honestly, it's like doing it in my dream. I mean, in my sleep to work with Janet. It's I know everything she's gone through. So if there's an emotion that I'd like to see her, I just remind her of some things that have happened. So.
1991 started off with a bit of controversy. Her sister LaToya released a tell-all autobiography that shocked the public, alleging their father had been physically and sexually abusive to the Jackson children. For the first time ever, one of the siblings publicly confronted the darker side of their family's legacy, stirring intense scrutiny around the Jackson name after rumblings for many years, and putting a crack in their picture-perfect image they had all tried to keep up.
I mean, the stories that you've heard about abuse and all that, that's not true. And I know my sister has said lots of things and lots of lies about myself. That bothers me very much for her to say something like that. But I think, I'm not going to harp on this, but I think it's just a way of getting attention, the attention that she didn't get from the public.
At the time, Janet fiercely denied LaToya's allegations, accusing her of fabricating the claims. Years later, LaToya would reveal that her manager and then husband, Jack Gordon, had coerced her into making the accusations, even inserting his own fabrications into the book to humiliate the Jackson family and further his control over her. Despite Janet's denials, Michael would eventually confirm a couple of years after the book's release that abuse had, in fact, occurred within the Jackson household. Obviously, the Jacksons were a complicated family. Life in the spotlight can do that to you. When you hear news about your brothers and sisters through CNN or Ed Gordon, you grow distant not just literally but spiritually as well. And when you don't have family to bond you, you look for people outside of it. The book did little more than propel the Jacksons into the limelight further. Janet came out relatively unscathed, and as she was taking time off for the first time in over a year, due to her 5-leg world tour, she married Renee in a private ceremony. In a 2001 article to Essence, she wrote, "I admit it, I was deluded. I married again, this time in secret to Renee Elizondo Jr., convinced that privacy would protect the sanctity of our bond. As a wife, I reasoned that the private Janet would have a better chance than the public Janet." That year, she also inked one of the most lucrative deals for a pop star by signing to Virgin for an estimated $30 to $50 million, making her the highest paid singer ever, even surpassing her brother at the time.
It's difficult being a woman. It's a lot harder being a female, gaining the respect that you deserve. But I feel that I have it. I know that I have it now.
Hi, I'm Jack A. Harry. And I'm Regina King, and 227 is on vacation.
While Janet was dropping Dream Street, there was another little girl from Windsor Hills who had dreams as well. Regina Renee King wanted to be a star, and she was finally getting her shot at fame. After auditioning 14 times for the role, she landed the part of Brenda Jenkins, the precocious daughter of Mary and Lester in the sitcom 227. The series premiered in 1985, and at only 14 years old, Regina lit up on camera. She earned a Young Artist Award nomination that same year for Best Young Actress. But by 1990, just as Janet was beginning the Asian leg of her world tour, 227 was canceled. And for a time, Regina went back to normal life. She enrolled at the University of Southern California as a communications major, never stepping into the film school's territory. But after a while, she realized she still had the acting bug. When a casting director called asking if she knew how to get ghetto, she was taken aback. But she took on the challenge. She nailed the initial audition with them, and that led her to a meeting with the director. His name was John Singleton.
Back in the J-Town, I bet they didn't know that Tupac would come up and I'm never going down.
In 1991, At only 20 years old, Tupac had lived the life of a man twice his age. Just a month after Boyz had premiered, Tupac had linked up with writer Sal Manna in the San Fernando Valley to pen his own biography. The beginning of the manuscript read, "Life for the young black male is hard. It's not the Cosby Show. I'm not perfect. I'm not half good. I'm all bad. The young black male can identify with me and all that pain growing up poor. We need someone who's been through that and narrowly escaped. We need someone who's still in the streets, someone who stands for something." 3 years before, Tupac was 17 years old and in the Bay Area, a long way from his previous home in Baltimore. That year, he began to start doing his own music under the name MC New York. He was born in Manhattan, after all. He was always artistic, having went to the Baltimore School of the Arts when he was back on the East Coast and writing poems in his notebook ad nauseum. He would attend weekly writers' circles for young poets and artists, taught by Layla Steinberg, who saw potential in the brash teenager who had so much to say. She would start to shop him around, eventually linking him up with the manager of the group Digital Underground. By 1990, Tupac was on tour with the group as a roadie. Gregory Jacobs, also known as Shock G, founded the group Digital Underground in 1987, and by 1990, their first album, Sex Packets, hit shelves. The album was fueled by the hit single The Humpty Dance, which reached number 11 on the pop charts. While rolling with the crew, Tupac was forming a group of his own called Strictly Dope. But Digital Underground co-founder Jimmy Chopmaster J. Drite called out that Pac might not have been cut out for the whole group thing, saying, "This guy was on a mission from day one." Maybe he knew he wasn't going to be around 7 years later. Everyone knew Tupac had potential. He was featured on the single Same Song, which was released in January 1991 and reached number 15 on the dance charts.
Okay, for the people out there that don't know what juice is, what is juice?
Juice is respect, power. How far will you go to get it?
2 months after she finished working on Boyz N The Hood, casting director Jackie Brown got a call from Ernest Dickerson, who used to be Spike Lee's director of photography, but was now branching out and doing his own thing. He was going to be the director of a new film and he needed help casting. They had a role for a guy that they wanted to be a rapper type. Jackie knew Shock G and sent him the script, but he passed on it. She called Tretch from Naughty by Nature, but his audition didn't cut it. She was searching for the right guy until some unknown kid walked into her office. He convinced Jackie to let him audition for her, and he was perfect.
If you gotta go out, that's how you go out.
She called the producers and director and told them, "I think I found Bishop."
How you doing? My name's Khalil Kane. I play Raheem in Juice.
I'm Washington Epps. I play Q. Jermaine Hopkins. I play Still. Stand and sing, Tupac.
Tupac Shakur. I play point guard for the Chicago Bulls. No. Stay and sing. Tupac Shakur. I play Bishop.
The movie Juice is a tale of 4 young guys in Harlem who find their bond shattered after a convenience store robbery turns deadly, leading Tupac's character Bishop down a dark path of violence and betrayal. Tupac's portrayal of Bishop, a character consumed by power and violence, required him to search within himself to find the darkness inside of him and portray it on camera. The film shot between March and April of 1991, and Tupac made $75,000 for the movie. Khalil Kane, who played Raheem in the film, knew that Pac had greater ambitions. He said he had already recognized, "This is a role that could propel me right to where I want to be. I've got this album ready to go. If I had this plus that, oh shit." None of us knew that. Pac did, though. Tupac had been working on his debut album, signing to Interscope in August of that year. He was on top of the world, with a new movie and a debut project on the way. His first solo single was released in September, but about a month later, while walking to the bank in Oakland, he was stopped for jaywalking, and then, when the officers didn't like what he had to say, he was allegedly slammed to the ground and held in a chokehold while being handcuffed. The same day he was thrown in jail after being beaten, his video for the single Trapped premiered on MTV. Tupac, the son of activist and Black Panther Party member Afeni Shakur, took this moment to speak up, and he sued the Oakland PD for $10 million.
Officer Boyvic repeatedly slammed my face into the floor while Rogers put the cuffs on me. That's not called for jaywalking.
Mind you, this was California in 1991. That same year, Rodney King was brutally beaten on tape by LAPD, and the cops would eventually be let off without so much as a slap on the wrist. Pac's lawsuit would eventually be settled for $42,000. A month after he filed suit, His debut album, Tupacalypse Now, was released, obviously inspired by the 70s movie of a similar name. The album debuted at number 64 on the Billboard 200, but eventually peaked at number 13 on the hip-hop and R&B charts in the beginning of 1992. The album was a departure from the silly lyrics and up-tempo beats that Digital Underground was accustomed to. Tupacalypse Now was raw, gritty, and socially conscious. Just about every song had a message. The second single, Brenda's Got a Baby, was about a young girl dealing with a teen pregnancy. It made it to number 3 on the rap charts.
Heard about your story, have listened to many of the accounts of what's happened to you as a young man, and looking at the movie Juice, you know, which is a powerful story, but Juice seems like a Sunday school picnic after hearing about your life, to tell you the truth, yes, brother. Lord.
Juice was released in January 1992 to positive reviews. The New York Times called Tupac's Bishop the film's most magnetic figure. That same month, John Singleton was working with a magnetic figure of his own.
Like Michael Jackson.
On the Universal Studios backlot, he filmed a 9-minute short film for the Michael Jackson single, Remember the Time, featuring a cast that included Eddie Murphy, Iman, and Magic Johnson. The Egyptian-themed music video showcased Michael in a different light than his videos of the past. John wanted to surround Michael with black people. It had been public fodder, fueled mostly by his changing skin tone, that Mike wasn't down with the culture. So, John wanted to showcase that. The video would be heralded as a masterpiece by many, but Singleton had something else on his mind, his new film.
I was 24 years old. I had just been nominated for 2 Academy Awards, and my whole life was changing. To that end, with the success of the first film, I wanted to make sure that, you know, no matter what, you know, the second film would be at least a moderate success. So, you know, I wrote the screenplay with Janet Jackson in mind.
No one wants to be a one-hit wonder, especially in filmmaking. John knew the stakes were high. His first film was a major success, and he wanted his sophomore movie to live up to it. So, he took some big swings. Based in LA, the storyline sent to the press read verbatim: a contemporary love story involving an African-American man and woman from South Central Los Angeles. Having been thrown together during a road trip, they find their initial opinions of each other are not as different as they had thought them to be. Through poetry and violence, these two learn how to cope with their inner-city lives, responsibilities, and coming of age. He knew he wanted Janet Jackson to play the lead, a girl named Justice. But Ice Cube had just turned down the role of her opposite, Lucky. Cube couldn't see himself being lovey-dovey on screen. John had just seen a sneak peek of Juice, and he couldn't get the actor who played Bishop out of his head. So he dialed Tupac up.
A movie's in the making right about now, Poetic Justice.
That's right. I'm taking a break in between shots right now, you know. Working on my next movie.
I hear you.
Boy right here.
And my man right here, Tupac. Yeah, what's happening? We're on the set.
Tupac said, "I knew this role was for Cube, and it was a mission for me. I wanted to make the role over. Make them feel that they could never get anybody else to do this." Singleton's first choice for the lead role was Janet, and after a meeting with him, she had interest in doing the film, but others weren't convinced. From the script, the role was supposed to depict a young woman from South Central LA. Janet was arguably the most famous woman in the world and lived in Encino. There were questions from the powers that be about whether she could convincingly play a girl from the hood. So, Singleton decided to audition other girls, just in case his hunch about Janet was incorrect. The casting breakdown sent to just about every black actress in Hollywood read like this: Seeking Justice. A beautiful brown-skinned African-American girl, age 17 to 22 years old. A poet working as a hairstylist, still looking for her place in the world. Lead. Due to his debut film being such a hit, there was hype around the script. Every black actress, from Lisa Bonet to Jada Pinkett, wanted this part. Besides, there weren't many substantial roles for black women at the time, and to be honest, there still aren't. If Janet didn't work out, Singleton found a second choice. Monica Calhoun was originally supposed to play Brandy in Boyz N The Hood, but her schedule for the television show Baghdad Cafe kept her from committing. Nia Long would get the part instead. But anyways, she auditioned for the part of Justice and fit the character's description perfectly. She was beautiful, talented, and convincing. But not convincing enough to rescind Janet's offer.
I think he just has a gift for seeing something in people in pulling it out of them and putting the right people together.
Regina was a shoo-in for the role of Iesha, Justice's best friend with a drinking and attitude problem. It wasn't too far removed from the character she played in Singleton's first film, Shalika. She would ultimately get cast for the role in this one too.
Start her running around here wearing sunglasses. And you know how she like bragging about her pretty little green eyes.
One might wonder, why would Janet Jackson, at the height of superstardom, want to star in Poetic Justice? She didn't need the money. Her multi-million-dollar deal with Virgin Records was already inked, and those closest to her, concerned about her marketability, warned her against doing a black movie. But Janet was drawn to the role for reasons that went beyond fame or finances. She had seen Boyz N The Hood and was captivated. Her and John connected soon after and quickly became friends. During one of their conversations, before he finished the script, Janet shared a memory about a girl telling her, "You ain't all that." She said it off the cuff, and it completely caught John off guard. He suddenly got inspired. If he hadn't heard Janet talk like that, he figured the world hadn't either. Singleton wanted Janet to break free from her glamorous persona and embody something completely new, a regular woman navigating pain, love, and resilience. To prepare her, he gave her a Maya Angelou book to study. Janet took the challenge seriously. According to the book, Poetic Justice, filmmaking South Central style, her co-star Tyra Farrell, who played Jessie and previously Mrs. Baker, met Janet for the first time and asked, "Can you be hard?" Without hesitation, Janet replied, "Yes." Reflecting later, she told Singleton she should have said, "Yeah." It was clear. Janet wasn't just accepting a role, she was on a mission.
She's taking it to a new realm, I think.
For her Rhythm Nation album, producers Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis famously declared they wanted to create the black album of all time. It was an intentional effort to connect with a distinctly black audience. Janet wanted the album in every black household in America. While her brother Michael had the best-selling album of all time with Thriller, Janet set out to carve a different legacy, a deep cultural resonance within her community. For a time, Janet was celebrated as the Jackson sibling who was authentically down. In a Rolling Stone interview, she recalled preferring to hang out with kids being bussed from South Central over the prissy Valley kids at her junior high. She was determined to carry that energy into Poetic Justice. She said, "When I accepted the role, other voices started asking, 'How can a rich girl from the burbs play a homegirl from the hood?' My reaction was, 'Well, watch me.'"
What's your name, baby?
Lucky.
Come here, Lucky.
The screen test between Jackson and Shakur went off perfectly in February 1992. Janet sported box braids, something new for her, and somehow made her look even more beautiful than she already was. Their chemistry radiated off the screen, and it was official. They had found their lucky in justice.
She wants to make something of herself, and so does he, which is really nice. It is very positive, and a lot of the young women, I feel, are really going to like that.
The film is simple, really. It's about justice, this young woman from South Central Los Angeles who witnesses her boyfriend's murder right in front of her. After that, she shuts herself off from the world, burying her feelings in her poetry. Then, she gets talked into this road trip to Oakland with her friend Iesha, Iesha's boyfriend Chicago, played by Joe Torre, and Lucky, a postal worker who's got his own struggles going on. At first, the trip is awkward. There's tension, arguments, all that. But as they spend more time together, Justice and Lucky start to break through each other's walls. It becomes less about the destination, and more about them learning how to connect, heal, and maybe even hope again. Poetic Justice doesn't try to be Boyz N The Hood, and I think that threw a lot of people off about this film at first. It's quieter, more reflective. It's not about big, dramatic moments, but those small, human ones. It gives you time to sit with the characters, to feel what they're feeling. Maya Angelou's poetry is woven through it, adding this layer of artistry that really underscores Justice's journey. It's personal, introspective, and honestly, beautiful in its own way. Sometimes, healing doesn't come with a bang. It comes in those soft, unspoken moments, and that's what this film is about.
Seeing it because I listened to your album, read all the press on you, and I thought, this is an angry young man. He is a young man who's a little bit mad about the situation.
Everybody says that. Then me playing a murderer.
didn't help my
Right,
little
exactly.
reputation.
He's a real angry young man. Yeah.
But I'm a human being, you know what I'm saying? And I go through smiles, tears, laughter, all that. You know, I'm a Gemini too, which makes it even that much more complicated. So I can flip any second. But relatively, if I'm happy, everybody's happy. But as long as there's things going on that people are not happy at, that's when Tupac will start flipping.
Shooting began in April 1992. Juice had been released a few months before, and Brenda's Got a Baby was topping the charts. But that same month, while on a Texas highway, 19-year-old Ronald Ray Howard was pulled over for a broken headlight in a GMC Jimmy. When the cop approached his window, Howard fired a shot, killing him. He was listening to Tupac's Soulja's Story when he was pulled over. Howard's defense lawyer would claim that the music he was listening to contributed to his crime. This wasn't the first time rap music was villainized. NWA and Ice-T had also been accused of corrupting the youth through their lyrics. But this crime would transform Tupac from a rising young artist, known for leading the new African Panthers and speaking out against social issues, to, as Slate reporter Joel Anderson described him, America's most dangerous rapper.
To me, you can't be a revolutionary. And to me, that's what a gangster is. I mean, that's what they're trying to be, revolutionary. They just don't know that word, so they say gangsters. Because gangster really don't have a gun, got money, you know what I'm saying? So if you want to be revolutionary, you can't be a revolutionary and not love the people. I can't go out there and say it's all about the young black males and not love them, you know? But got to love our sisters. We got to be down for each other. That's priority.
Not to mention, while shooting the opening scene for the movie, the Rodney King verdict was rendered, and filming continued in Simi Valley as Los Angeles burned.
Right in the middle, man. Just like Robin Hood, eh?
Janet's husband, Renee, had gotten a role in the movie as well, as the smack-talking post office employee, but was said to have always been around the set, sometimes lingering over her scenes, getting in frame. But he commanded respect, partially because he was connected to her.
Did you get to kiss her?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
She a good kisser?
Oh, yes. 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 I was like, cut, do it again. One more time, John, please. Y'all don't even gotta pay me. Do it again.
Was her boyfriend on the set?
Right there. He's right there.
Did that intimidate you?
Not intimidate me, but it made me like really want to kiss her. You know what I'm saying? Because
one of the most memorable scenes in the film is the mirror scene with Justice. As described in the film's companion book, both Singleton and Renee had high expectations for Janet's performance. Renee reportedly told him, "Janet knows she's going to have to dig deep for that scene, and we want to be prepared." The scene was filmed just days after the high-profile verdict that weighed heavily on the cast and crew. Janet arrived on set and stepped into position in front of the mirror. As the Stevie Wonder track, "I Never Dreamed You'd Leave in Summer," played in the background, Janet stared at her reflection, laughed, and cried, all while evoking such authenticity that it moved the onlookers to tears. The following day, Singleton reflected on the impact of the scene, which had left the crew both impressed and deeply empathetic toward the youngest Jackson sibling. "She has a lot of pain," Singleton remarked. "She has to go through her music career being all happy."
I started performing when I was 7 years old, and I haven't stopped since then. So before that, I wanted to be a horse racing jockey. And I had my mind set on it. I knew that that's what I was going to be until I was asked to perform with the rest of my family. And I've been performing ever since.
You see, despite what many believed at the time, Janet's life was far more complex than just glittering performances and glamorous photo sessions. At only 25 years old, she had been married twice, both times to partners who would struggle with substance abuse, which brought its own set of emotional turmoil and heartache. She also battled deep self-image issues, constantly questioning her worth in an industry that scrutinized every detail of her appearance. Even in Singleton's write-up in Esquire about the film, journalist Joe Wood threw a jab about her nose, commenting about it, "Sad, like so many Jackson faces, a shadow of what was." About a year after filming this scene, Jordan Chandler's allegations towards Michael would start making their way to the press, putting Michael and their entire family under a microscope. Janet would lose a multi-million-dollar deal with Coca-Cola because of it. She was trapped in a spotlight that often felt more like a magnifying glass, amplifying every flaw and shadow in her life. And in that scene, for that movie, she was able to let it all go.
But isn't it true that
in order to get across what you want to say, you're always going to have to work with fairly limited budgets.
Why?
Well, because
Why?
I mean,
if I make $100 million, you know, for a certain company, don't you think I should get just as much as, you know, the regular guy that makes movies?
Hey,
average budget.
I'm
not gonna. No, I'm not. No, I'm. See, you know, I plan on being, you know, what Michael Jackson was to the music industry. I'm gonna be that for the film industry.
John had to jump through a lot of hoops to get this film done. From time constraints leading to him having to remove full scenes he had written, to execs showing up trying to throw off the vibe, being a director meant wearing many hats. Plus, he had to deal with Pac, who would make a habit of being late to set. Around this time, he had started to work on his sophomore album, and was reaping the benefits of what being a rap star had to offer. He got his Thug Life tattoo one weekend when he had free time during filming.
We kicked it, you know, but I went into the movie saying, you know, in order for me to do this right, I gotta really, truly, indeed fall in love with Janet Jackson. And I did that. I still believe that I did that. I really did fall for it. And when the movie was over, it was like we broke up. You know, and I felt her not being there.
Janet and Pac got along good on set. He jokingly called Janet a square due to his lateness, but their chemistry on set didn't end when the cameras cut. Regina noticed. She said, "I don't know if Janet will ever admit to it, but there was a bit of that chemistry going on. You could cut the air in the room at times." But she was in a relationship with Renee. Make no mistake about it.
I'm a woman phenomenally. Phenomenal woman. That's me.
To make a video about this film and not mention Maya Angelou would be a mistake. Singleton had initially wanted to write the poems in the film himself, but there were so many black female voices that were available, and could convey the thoughts of the woman more poignantly than he ever could. Miss Angelou makes a cameo in the film, with screen time for all of maybe 5 minutes, but her presence is felt.
I didn't know who he was, you know. I knew I'd heard, well, he was into a big row with another young man. And so I said to him, may I speak to you? And he was cursing. Ooh, I wouldn't give a... I said, I understand that, but let me speak to you. If these mother... I said, I got you. However, let me speak to you. And finally, I said, when was the last time anyone told you how important you are? Did you know our people stood on auction blocks, were sold, bought and sold? Did you know, so that you could stay alive today? And finally, he heard me and stopped talking and started to weep. And I put my arms around him and I walked him back into the arena and he quieted. And I went back to my trailer and Janet Jackson came running in. She said, Dr. Angelou, I don't believe you actually spoke to Tupac Shakur. So I said, darling, I don't know 6-pack, 4-pack. I had never heard of it.
Regina King had a lot riding on her shoulders with this role, far more than what was demanded in her first film, and certainly leagues beyond her work on 227. The part required her to stretch herself emotionally and physically. She had to act drunk on camera, she had to cry, and even throw punches in fight scenes. Adding to the challenge was a love scene with Joe Torre, who played her on-screen love interest. The love scene was a step outside her comfort zone. After the second take of the intimate scene, she was visibly eager for it to be over. John seemed to sense her discomfort. After just a few takes, 4 in total, he ended it.
I told you earlier, right? You guys are looking across the street at what's happening over here.
The last day of filming was on a Friday in July. It's the scene where Lucky drops Justice and Iesha off at the motel before the hair show. The crew shot from 5:30 p.m. till sunrise the next day. A member of the crew said that there was a rush that last night, based on the pure adrenaline of everyone on set. Shooting a movie all day every day for the most part, people tend to get close. The scene was emotional. Tupac sits on the bumper of the mail truck, crying due to the death of his cousin. The tears are helped with some eye drops from the costume department, but it looks good on camera. And that's a wrap. After the film wrapped, John was invited to the swearing-in of Bill Clinton in January 1993, where Dr. Maya Angelou recited her poem, On the Pulse of Morning, making her the first black woman to do an inaugural recitation ever. Singleton was standing shoulder to shoulder with stars like Oprah Winfrey and Whoopi Goldberg. Who would have thought just a few years before he was reading whack-ass scripts at Columbia?
I enjoy working with Janet. What it is that Janet is good to work with, just her personally. But everybody around her and all the people involved make it so much harder to work for her than she does. You know what I'm saying? It's like she's a nice person, but everybody else so, you know, royalty beat up in the head that they're like, you know, Janet Jackson, you know, and it's not good when you do the movie and you got to fall in love with this person. You kind of want to be on the same plane, you know what I'm saying? So
the promotional tour for the film wasn't scheduled with many cast interviews, and Tupac claims Janet changed her number on him right after they wrapped. But there might have been a reason for that. Janet and Pac had formed a friendship during the making of the movie. She invited him to Six Flags with her and Renee and even showed up on set to his video for If My Homie Calls. But when the final edits were sent out, her people called Tupac's manager and demanded they take her out of some scenes because she was in it too much. Tupac got angry and cut her out altogether. At the wrap party for the movie, the two kept their distance. Also, there was that rumor that he talked about in the press.
Somebody came to my trailer, the director of the film, John. We need you to take an AIDS test because you're going to kiss Janet. Q-Tip just kissed her. She caught a cold or something. You know what I'm saying? That's what they said. And I was like, well, am I going to really, you know, do it to her? They said no. I said, well, ain't no need for me to take a test. He left. The producer came in. You know, the white guy, you going to do it? No. You know what I'm saying? He left. Somebody else came in. So, everybody's trying to do a roundabout. My manager, my agent. So far, I was like, no, I'm not taking the test. If I'm going to get to really late with her, we could take 4 tests. If she really want to be show, you know? But other than that, it's disrespectful to me. You know what I'm saying? It just made me look at her like...
John had originally written a love scene for both Janet and Pac, which eventually was taken out of the script due to it conflicting with the overall story of the movie. Janet told Rolling Stone, "Justice is real to me. I feel her pain, and no, she's not ready for it. Not in the time frame of this movie. She's lost too much, and trusts too little." John had originally written in some lovemaking scenes between me and Tupac Shakur, and I was willing to get under the sheets with him. None of that happened, not even the lovemaking scene, because the story just wouldn't allow it. So, the world never got to see that. Tupac claimed the reason why is because he was asked to get tested before the scene. He said he was insulted by it, because first of all, they were acting. This allowed the press and fans to take aim at Janet. But it was eventually revealed that this was a publicity stunt orchestrated by Singleton. And Tupac even apologized to Janet in his song, My Mind Made Up.
The real talk is, Tupac was attracted to Janet, I was attracted to Janet.
The world was attracted to Janet. I got beef with you right now.
We're on the set, we're both trying to, like, you know, flirt with her and stuff. And I'm like, you know, well, I don't know if, you know, I should have you kissing on my actress because, you know, Pac was just coming in his own there, right? It's like, hell yeah, you know what? You're going to have to do an AIDS test before y'all do this love scene. It was a joke between...
She said that.
No, me.
Oh, you said that. Yeah.
And then we're like, oh, we should use this. We should put this out. And so that's what we did.
As a publicity thing?
As a publicity thing. We just did that shit.
I thought that shit was married.
But it was just like us talking about...
We didn't have Twitter. And everybody got mad at Janet Jackson.
Any closeness the two had achieved during the filming of the movie was squandered by that. But on July 21st, 1993, the film premiered at the Academy Theater in LA. And unlike Singleton's first feature, this one opened to mostly negative reviews. Critics took issue with various aspects of the movie, including the excessive cursing.
If I'm a bitch, your mama's a bitch.
Even with the negative reviews, the film was nominated for several awards, including an Academy Award nomination for Best Original Song for Janet's Again.
I couldn't believe it at first. I just got home. I just did not believe it. It's a dream come true. It really is. I've thought about this since I was a little girl.
Janet also won an MTV Movie Award for Best Female Performance and a Razzie Award for Worst New Star. So, reactions for her performance were mixed. The film, which had a $14 million budget, made $27.5 million at the box office.
I do look at 93 as a turning point for myself with the film, doing my first film, which has always been a dream of mine to see my big face on the big screen.
The film seemingly served as a transitional period for all of them. Janet's was most visible. Right after filming, Janet got in the studio to record her third album, and it was like Justice's introvertedness and depressive state was a skin she needed to shed. 2 months before the film premiered, the Janet album was released. We had seen Janet show a little skin before, in the Love Will Never Do video, but this new era was different. She said, Rhythm Nation was a heavy record, and Poetic Justice was a heavy movie. I wanted to do something lighter, but also daring. When I wrote the album, I was still in a poetic frame of mind, inspired by Maya's beautiful language. This time I felt much freer expressing myself. All songs, except 2, were written by Janet, Jimmy Jam, and Terry Lewis. And maybe Renee, who knows. Then there was the Rolling Stone cover, where it wasn't just implied Janet was stepping into a new era, she declared it entirely. She was officially a sex symbol.
I'm looking forward to starring roles now. And I'm hoping that this film will springboard me into those roles, much more positive, stronger roles.
On the other hand, the industry wasn't trying to let Regina step into anything new in the immediate aftermath of the film's release. Every role she would get sent seemed like another version of Iesha or Shalika. She was officially on the cusp of being typecast, and she refused to let that happen. She declared that she would not let that become her narrative. She could do more. For her next role, she decided to play Mother Nature in the television series Northern Exposure.
I'ma stay doing movies as long as they stay paying me for it.
Speaking of narratives, Tupac was trying to write his own. In February 1993, his sophomore album was out, which had shot him into the mainstream. The album's second single, I Get Around, reached number 11 on the Billboard 100. The third single, Keep Your Head Up, reached number 12. Tupac was officially a star. He had a hit album, 2 films under his belt, and he was finally getting the notoriety he always knew he deserved. However, right after the release of the film, there were a slew of incidents that kept Tupac in the public eye for all the wrong reasons. Wait, let's not forget about the Marin City incident in '92, where after performing at a festival in his old stomping grounds, a fight broke out about some earlier comments Tupac had made about the city. It is alleged that he pulled out a firearm and dropped it. It is also alleged that someone else shot into the crowd. And while none of the intended parties were hurt, a 6-year-old boy who was riding his bike was hit in the head. No one was charged for the incident. There was another situation in Atlanta in October of '93, where he was charged with shooting 2 off-duty officers after he said he saw them beating and harassing a black driver. All of the charges against him would eventually be dropped. That same year, and mere months after the movie hit theaters, Tupac and 2 other men were charged with assaulting a woman in his hotel room.
Okay. It just bothers me so much, you know what I'm saying, to go through my life and everything I did in my life coming out of a family and a household with just women, to get to this point, to have a woman say that I took something from her.
Tupac was living the fast life. It had been only 2 years since he first was featured on that Digital Underground single. And now the world knew his name, for both the right and wrong reasons. Then, things got even crazier.
It's a fly movie and it's better than anything else that came out this summer.
Janet was a sex symbol. Regina was a working actress. And Tupac was a maverick. But what about John? Despite the critical reviews of the film, John Singleton was still a big shot around Hollywood. Plus, his legacy was already cemented. A new wave of black cinema emerged amidst the success of Boyz N The Hood. By 1992, the momentum continued with iconic releases like Spike Lee's Malcolm X, and of course, Juice. Hollywood was finally starting to recognize that there was room for more than just one storyteller at the helm of our stories. And throughout the 90s, the wave didn't stop. His success opened doors for creatives throughout the industry. But he had his eyes on the next prize.
I swear to God, that was all my idea. It's not in the script. I got the original script. It wasn't in his head until I gave it to him. I gave him Aretha Franklin, Young Gifted and Black, headphones, running, talking. I was telling him all that shit. I seen the promo and it's Young Gifted and Black and a nigga running. And that's when I said, I hate this nigga.
Tupac claimed John stole some of his ideas for higher learning. Tupac was slated to star in the film as Malik, but after he caught his case in '94, the higher-ups wanted John to remove him from the film. Tupac also said John never publicly supported him after the incident, or with his other cases, like his scuffle with the Hughes brothers, that he also claimed stemmed from John, and also landed him 15 days in jail, that led to a fallout between them, and the two were never able to fix things.
The public's never seen this side of me. It's just a matter of maturing, and the film really opening
me up. I'm not shy the way I used to be at all.
On July 21, 1993, the film Poetic Justice premiered at the Academy Theater in Los Angeles. The stars were out, and the stakes were high. So what happens when you bring together a former child actor, a pop star, a filmmaker, and a revolutionary? Well, Janet's an icon. Regina stands as one of only 10 black women to ever win an Oscar. John is celebrated as one of the most groundbreaking filmmakers in history. And Tupac? He's immortal. Together, they made history.